Never did I dream that I would have had the opportunity to become a representative. I want to say to you further that there are all kinds of opportunities that are now available to you, but the most important thing is that you have to be prepared in order to be able to meet the problems of the future.
When I was on my way up to the speaker's office, I noticed there was a little boy looking at a picture, and he kept glazing at it. And finally, I walked up to him and said, "Do you know who that woman is?" And he said, "No, ma'am." And I said, "That's Shirley Chisholm."
Obama's election, as historic as it may be, represents the betrayal of the principles that Chisholm in particular unapologetically
unchallenged by so-called black Kennedy. I don't ask much, but when evolution comes, you'll remember me. Yeah. Remember me.
How should we remember her? In the mainstream consciousness, Chisholm is too often aligned as this utopian symbol of political achievement against racism and sexism. I believe it's essential to go beyond that. Chisholm's campaign and mobilization of black women voters expanded the rich history of black women who came before her, like Ida B. Wells, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Fannie Lou Hamer, who showed us what black women's political magic looked like before the hashtag.
The beauty of her experience was that when she said she was unbossed, I like to also to say she was unbossed, that she did not allow that to deter her, those detractors to deter her from doing and saying what she believed was right.
So I realize that this is a rough road, but a catalyst for change in a society is usually persona non grata with those who have been the beneficiaries of the system.
A few months ago, I was up on Capitol Hill, taking my normal stroll around to check on, as Miss Chisholm would often tell me to do, go check on the girls. See how Maxine and Eleanor are doing. Check in on Nita. Find out what Barbara Lee is up to.
There are times in our lives when we all have to be leaders, when we cannot let either our ancestors or our children down. Shirley Chisholm took a stand for peace. She spoke out against the Vietnam War early and often.
Mr. Speaker, as a teacher and as a woman, I do not think I will ever understand what kind of values can be involved in spending $9 billion and more, I am sure, on elaborate, unnecessary, and impractical weapons when several thousand disadvantaged children in the nation's capital get nothing.
For me, one such event came on September 14, 2001. Congress rushed in anger, anguish, and grief to pass a resolution unleashing unlimited war.
Some of us must urge the use of restraint.
I didn't know I would be alone in my vote against that resolution that day, and it didn't really matter. Sometimes you just have to do what you know what is right in your heart, even if you're alone.
For this reason, I intend to vote no on every money bill that comes to the floor of this House that provides any funds for the Department of Defense. Any bill whatsoever, until the time comes when our values and priorities have been turned right side up again, and our country starts to use its strength, its tremendous resources, for people and peace, not for profits and war.
The principles that guided her were correct then, and they remain true today, as we spend billions of dollars on wars around the world when domestic needs at home are suffering.
Went into the issue of attendance at CUNY schools, and they're minorities primarily, and they couldn't get in. Bracy Sutton and Shirley Chisholm led the fight.
So you must make the most of your educational opportunities.
Shirley made an impassioned speech for SEEK, and we ended up with the SEEK program.
Because you don't know, maybe I have a future senator or future state assemblyman or maybe a future congresswoman in this group listening to me.
She wanted to make sure that there were jobs for the community. And not only for the men in the community, but the women in the community.
Whether it be affordable housing or racial profiling or education or police brutality, immigration, or how to address the abuse of presidential powers. These issues were significant in 1968, and we still see the importance of them today, 50 years later.
I first met Shirley Chisholm around 1968. I was 13 going on 14. She ran for the Congress. And in the campaign, I got to meet Miss Chisholm. I got to know her. She knew me as a boy preacher because I was a boy preacher at the time. By 72, I became the youth coordinator for her campaign for president. The first time I voted in the year that she ran for president. She had passion, fire, but she left things she achieved, legislation, resources in our community. The reason why I'm fighting in Ferguson for Michael Brown, the reason why I'm fighting for Eric Gardner in Staten Island is because of a fiery woman in Brooklyn that took time with a little boy and said, you gotta fight for what's right. A book, The Good Fight, I keep in my library.
Sign up for the show and tells. I do this thing here for Oscar Grant and Sean Bell. I rep well for those in hell before the shells fell. The melanated concentrated up in prison cells. Well,
this country is moving in the direction that Rome moved before it fell.
Put your hands up high into their vertical and rock out as we sew it up surgical. You know exactly who I'm talking to. The lions did not know exactly what I'm walking through.
What gets lost in translation of Chisholm's triumphant narrative is a continual animosity.
Literally throw eggs or throw, rotten fruit.
The countless roadblocks and attacks she endured.
People in the audience, people who disagreed with her, people, her opponents.
Which stemmed from Chisholm's decision to be unbought and unbossed.
And I went in to see her. She was in the room all by herself writing, and she looked like death warmed over. She was exhausted. She was absolutely exhausted.
If our very basic Constitution had phrases in it that had to do with slavery, and if we go back to the growth, the birth of this country, and the growth of this country, and if we go back to the laws and rules and regulations of the states, I can't be optimistic. I try to be, but I can't. I can't be optimistic.
There are times in our lives when we all have to be leaders, when we cannot let either our ancestors or our children down.
For our brothers and sisters behind the wall, change can't wait. To our immigrants worried about the knock on the door, change can't wait. To women whose rights are perpetually under attack, change can't wait.
What would you do? You would stand up and you would fight for them.
It's your support or without your support. That's right. I'm gonna be out here representing for my father.
People! Right? The thing that people forget is that we are millions and millions strong across the world. That is a power base.
We have it within our grasp. We have it within our grip. We have it.
And together we will deliver.
We can turn things around in this country, but we've got to get out of our quiescence.
This is why we are so dedicated to talking about the legacy of Shirley Chisholm. Chisholm is not frozen at the Chisel Project. She tells the story of her resilience, genius, and strategy for a new generation of leaders who are no longer asking for a seat at the table, but as Chisholm instructed, bringing their own folding chair. We see this in the new class of diverse Congresswomen entering Congress in January. Because she brought a chair, we now have a seat.
I am a people's politician. I have emerged in America as a new breed of politician, a new kind of politician. Whether I will survive or not will depend on the people. I mean that.
This is why we implore you to be a part of the living legacy of Shirley Chisholm. here at Brooklyn College. There are a number of initiatives that we have in mind to broaden the scope of our mission, to allow students who pass by the buildings that bear her name, or children who will play in the park dedicated to her memory, to truly understand what Shirley Chisholm meant for Brooklyn, the United States, and the world. So we ask you to support our mission and donate to the Shirley Chisholm Project at chisholmproject.com. Thank you.